Imagine walking for an hour, feeling the Toronto sun above you, surrounded by thousands of people, only to hear someone say, "We still have 3 or 4 more turns to go." What would you do? Would you give up? Would you turn around? Or would you keep walking because, at the end of that long line, there is something you have been waiting for with all your heart? That is exactly what makes the scenes in Toronto so remarkable. ARMY have gathered in huge numbers around Rogers Stadium, creating an astonishing line that seems to stretch farther than many people expected. And while the images may look like nothing more than a massive concert queue, there is a much deeper story behind them. Because this is not simply about waiting to enter a stadium. It is about anticipation. It is about memories. It is about music. And for millions of BTS fans around the world, it is about finally getting the chance to experience BTS together again. And somewhere at the center of that emotional connection is Jimin. For many fans, Jimin is not simply a performer they admire from a distance. His voice, his dancing, his expressions, and the emotional quality he brings to performances have created a special connection with ARMY over the years. So when BTS arrives in a major international city like Toronto, the excitement does not simply begin when the concert starts. It begins hours before. It begins on the streets. It begins in the lines. It begins with fans walking toward the stadium, carrying their bags, light sticks, merchandise, phones, cameras, and memories. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we are taking a closer look at the incredible scenes surrounding BTS in Toronto, especially the enormous ARMY line heading toward Rogers Stadium. And stay with me until the end, because there is one detail in this footage that makes the situation even more surprising. After approximately an hour of waiting and moving through the queue, fans could still see several more turns ahead, 3 or 4 more switchbacks, 3 or 4 more sections of waiting. And that simple detail tells us something powerful about just how much excitement BTS has generated in Toronto. At first glance, you might think this is simply a normal concert queue. But look closer. The line is not short. It does not disappear after a few meters. Instead, it stretches through a large area, with fans moving through carefully organized sections designed to manage the enormous crowd. From a distance, the stadium may look relatively close. But when you follow the actual path fans have to take, the journey suddenly seems much longer. That is what makes these images so fascinating. The destination may be visible, but getting there is another story. Imagine standing there after traveling all the way to Toronto. You have already spent time preparing for the concert. You may have traveled from another city. You may have booked a hotel. You may have spent months waiting for this moment. You may have saved money for the ticket. You may have chosen the perfect outfit. You may have prepared your BTS merchandise. And now, finally, you are standing among thousands of other fans. But the stadium entrance is still ahead. And the line keeps moving. Slowly. Step by step. One turn at a time. For some people, waiting like this might sound exhausting. But for ARMY, moments like these can become part of the memory itself. Years from now, fans may not remember exactly how many minutes they stood in one particular section of the queue. They may not remember who was standing directly in front of them. They may not even remember every detail of the weather. But they may remember the feeling. They may remember looking around and realizing that thousands of other people were there for the exact same reason. BTS. That is the fascinating thing about a global fandom. People who have never met before can suddenly find themselves connected because of the same songs, the same performances, and the same emotional memories. And for many fans, Jimin is an important part of that connection. Think about what Jimin represents to many ARMY. His performances are known for their emotional intensity. His dancing can be incredibly precise, yet still feel deeply expressive. His voice carries a unique softness and emotion. And when he performs, many fans feel that he is communicating something beyond the choreography itself. Of course, we should never assume what a celebrity personally feels based solely on fan reactions. But we can clearly see the impact BTS and its members have had on their audience. The Toronto scenes are evidence of that impact. People are willing to wait. They are willing to travel. They are willing to stand for hours. And they are willing to endure the uncertainty of a massive crowd, because they believe the experience waiting for them inside the stadium will be worth it. That is where the emotional story becomes much bigger than the queue itself, because every person in that line has a different reason for being there. Maybe someone is attending with their best friend. Maybe two sisters have planned this trip together for months. Maybe a mother is bringing her daughter to experience BTS live. Maybe an adult fan who discovered BTS years ago is finally getting the chance to see them in person. And maybe someone in that crowd has been listening to BTS during some of the most difficult moments of their life. That is something statistics can never fully explain. A concert audience can be counted. Tickets can be counted. Seats can be counted. But emotions cannot. And that is why these Toronto images are so powerful. They show us the human side of a global phenomenon. When we see BTS on stage, everything looks polished. The lights are perfect. The sound is carefully prepared. The choreography is synchronized. The cameras capture dramatic moments. The crowd screams when the members appear. But before that happens, there is another world outside the stadium. There are people walking. People waiting. People talking. People laughing. People checking their phones. People sharing updates. People trying to stay comfortable while the line slowly moves forward. This is the part of a concert experience that viewers watching from home rarely see. And yet, it can become one of the most memorable parts of the entire journey. Because there is something special about waiting together. The people around you may be strangers, but suddenly you have something in common. You can talk about your favorite BTS song. You can talk about your favorite member. You can discuss previous concerts. You can share theories. You can show each other photos. You can talk about Jimin's performances. And sometimes, those small conversations become friendships. That is another reason why ARMY gatherings can feel so unique. The fandom creates a sense of community even among people who have never met before. And Toronto appears to be showing that sense of community in a very visible way. The crowd is large. The line is long. But the atmosphere is not simply about impatience. There is anticipation. There is excitement. There is curiosity about what is waiting inside. And there is that unmistakable feeling of being part of something much larger than yourself. Now let's talk about that surprising detail again. After around an hour in the queue, fans were still facing several more turns. 3 or 4 more sections. That means the visual impression of the line may not even fully communicate how much distance people actually had to cover. This is why the footage is so striking. A camera can show hundreds or thousands of people, but when the queue bends repeatedly, the true scale becomes difficult to understand. One section ends. Another begins. Then another. And another. It creates the feeling that the line simply keeps going. For someone watching from home, the reaction might be immediate. How many people are actually there? And that question is exactly what makes the Toronto scene so compelling. Because the answer is not simply a number. It is a collection of stories. Thousands of people. Thousands of journeys. Thousands of reasons. All moving toward the same destination. Rogers Stadium. And beyond the stadium entrance is the moment they have been waiting for. The moment when the lights go down. The crowd becomes louder. The first notes begin. And eventually BTS appears. For many fans, that moment can make hours of waiting suddenly feel insignificant. The tired feet? Forgotten. The long walk? Forgotten. The heat? Forgotten. The uncertainty? Gone. Because when the person you have been waiting to see finally appears on stage, everything changes. And for Jimin fans, that emotional moment can be especially powerful. Imagine waiting for hours, and then hearing the crowd suddenly erupt. You know something is about to happen. The lights change. The atmosphere shifts. Thousands of light sticks begin to glow. And then suddenly Jimin is there. That transition from waiting to witnessing can be incredibly emotional. But there is another important point here. This is not only about Jimin. It is not only about one member. When BTS comes together, the emotional energy comes from all 7 members. Jin, Suga, J-Hope, RM, Jimin, V, Jungkook. Each member has their own relationship with ARMY. Each has their own story. And together, they create the identity that fans recognize as BTS. That is why the Toronto crowd matters. The fans are not simply waiting for a performance. They are waiting for an experience that connects years of music, memories, and emotions. It is not simply proof that people are willing to stand for hours. It is proof that the destination matters to them. And sometimes, the journey towards something meaningful becomes part of the memory itself. So when you look at these images from Toronto, don't only see a long line. Look at the people. Look at the anticipation. Look at the different generations of fans standing together. Look at the families. Look at the friends. Look at the fans who traveled from far away. Look at the people who may have waited years for a moment like this. Because behind every face is a story. And behind every story is a reason they chose to be there. That is why the Toronto footage feels so much bigger than a normal concert update. It becomes a snapshot of what fandom can look like when thousands of people gather around something they genuinely love. But here is where the story becomes even more interesting. The enormous queue is only the beginning. The real question is what happens after all that waiting. What happens when those fans finally enter Rogers Stadium? What happens when the lights go down? What happens when the first sound from the stage reaches the crowd? And most importantly for Jimin fans, what happens when Jimin finally appears in front of that Toronto audience? Because after all the walking, waiting, standing, and anticipation, there comes a moment when everything changes.